They have 3, I think, in circulation right now. One's a red blend, the other was a rosé, and then there's a sparkling white wine called a Brut, which I'm actually enjoying right now during this recording. In this cool, like, mad scientist beaker they're keeping it in. I like it a lot. It's fun to check it out. But yeah, my wife and I drank it while we were watching the movie, and actually made the movie more enjoyable. Which isn't to say it wasn't enjoyable already, but man, once you got liquor in you,
yeah. So you get a cool little Bunsen beaker bottle of booze. Afterwards, you can make Invisible Man potion. You can sit down with your friends and watch The Princess Bride, and when they say, "You are the Brute Squad," you just hammer your whole case of Brutes using the code FILM as you check out, so you'll get a discount for being our listeners. And when you hammer the whole thing, when they tell Andre, "You are the Brute Squad," you drink all your Brutes, you get back on Usual Wine's website, and you order a whole gang more using the code FILM. What's the website, Alec? What's the official website?
You go to www.usualwines.com. With your order, you put the discount code FILM in, and you'll get $8 off your first order, and you get a free glass on them.
And when you drink your free glass for being a Film Alchemist listener, you picture me running up to Bill Paxton naked with wines. Now I know they're going to sell this.
Oh, my God. All right, let's get to the pod.
Greetings, friends! Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my white-haired, strange-eyed, cavorting with other hive-minded children and co-host,
Alex Dandino. Yes, absolutely.
All right, guys, as always, you can find us on all the social media platforms you're on. Go ahead, follow us, subscribe, whatever all the various buttons and pressings of things happen over there. Find us there, get at us, shout us out, recommend movies, recommend themes, double features, guest hosts, anything like that. We'd love to hear from you. In that vein, you can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com, if you also want to reach out to us that way. We also are giving you the ability to look at our faces as you listen to our voices on our YouTube channel, Nerd Alchemist. We have some new videos coming out. We have trailer reactions. We're starting our filmography face-offs, which we're very excited about. We started out, we made the case, whose filmography would you rather have, Wes Craven or John Carpenter? It was a tough battle. We had to make the ones we love fight, but it was very fun. So that's it, guys. Lots of good stuff coming for you. Make sure you use our code FILM over at usualwines.com. Get yourself some wine while you listen to the show and watch some movies. All good stuff. All right. Absolutely. That's the business. Let's talk devil children. Or in this case, satanic children? Yeah, we don't know what these children are.
Satanic, alien children. I could not tell you, to be honest with you.
Yeah. We'll get to that later. But Alex, today in the Pod's Evil Spawn Month,
yes,
we have hit Village of the Damned.
Yeah, Village of the Damned, 1960, which is the original version.
Yeah, not the John Carpenter one, which Alex watched like a rube. Just kidding. There's never a bad time to watch a John Carpenter movie. But I do think for this specific story, I think the 1960 version is such a better distillation of this idea. Alex, what are your initial thoughts on Village of the Damned?
I agree with you. I mean, I think that it's weird because we just got through John Carpenter month, and I think Village of the Damned remake.
You're just you're like in the mode. You're like, oh, obviously it's the John Carpenter one.
Right. I mean, like, that was my initial thought, and I'm like, cool, yeah. Like, it's one of those just after effects of doing like so many John Carpenter movies in a short period of time. So, but it's interesting because I watched that one. I was like, oh shit, we were supposed to watch the other one. So I turned on Village of the Damned from 1960, and I realized like the thing that's missing from The thing that's missing from John Carpenter's version, the thing that makes this one so interesting is this like sort of super repressed Britishness that I'm not sure that we don't get like anywhere else. Like we've watched Peeping Tom and a couple other great like British horror movies on this pod and a couple of just British dramas in general. You don't get that level of repression from other countries' films, and Britain particularly just has such a great does such a great job of like freaking everyone out with like things that shouldn't be scary at all. Like people walking in straight lines and being polite. It's just terrifying.
But you know what's weird though is that I would argue the Britishness is important in this film because everything that happens in this movie is the scariest thing of all time. We're talking about
Yes.
the end of religion,
Yes.
life as we know it, planet Earth, like everything. This movie makes the case and says specifically, here is an event from which we cannot go back, right?
Yes.
There's one of these things that a lot of these kind of horror movies and science fiction horror movies do at the end where it's like, they're gone, we'll move on. But you're like, you always get the sense that when these characters survive something like that, that world still changed because now we'll be like, oh man, we got to fucking develop like psychic bullets or something for when those little fuckers come back. This is a watershed moment, but you have these people who are still like, well, I need to go put on my tuxedo to have a sherry by the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
And politely, like, rabble rouse with my wife and brother-in-law. And I was like, that's what I love, is that these British people are just really keeping it together in a way that I find like, even they have that great scene where it's like the war cabinet meeting, right? And if this was like an American movie, it'd literally be generals like ripping out their pecs and like, let's fucking arm wrestle for it.
It's literally exactly what I just said though. Like the upper crust, the uptightness of everyone to me is the thing that's terrifying because no one wants to like give up the ghost. Cause like, yeah, if this was an American movie and like it is obviously in some ways, but if this was an American idea, this would immediately be like the level of shock and terror that like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a movie that I think you could correlate to this movie as like sort of a similar time period, similar addressing of fears. But the difference in which a way that's handled is so fascinating to me because where hysteria really runs the gamut for Don Siegel's version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Village of the Damned does such a good job of everyone just like quietly walking around being like, just shut the fuck up and do your job. All right. Just go about your day. Don't fuck around whatever you do. All right. And also those kids are terrifying. Like there's a level of buttoned upness that's scarier than any other movie that I think that could come out of this time.
But they say that in the war meeting, right? Where it's like the Eskimos just slaughtered them, right? And they start listing off tribes. They're like, so somewhere in like what looked like the old Soviet Union, right? Yeah, they're murdered all the kids and mothers, just straight up murders.
Not just murder them, they fucking blew them up with a nuclear shell.
Well, no, like that's later, right? Because then they get to Russia and they're like, of course, the Russians, they like Dolph Lundgren them, right? And they're like, they put him into a facility with, genius scientists. Like, we're going to really weaponize these things as fast as we can. Obviously, that didn't go well. They got hit with an atomic bullet, I think they called it back then, right? Yeah. But yeah, so you're like, all these other countries are just like, ew, gross, and slaughter these fucking kids. And the British are like, well, perhaps we'll live with them in the school. We'll talk to them. Yeah. Of course, we'll reach them.
Perhaps we shouldn't do anything too crazy.
It's one of the most British ideas of like, we'll land our ships in their school. We'll take over. They'll be glad we're here. They'll pay us money. It's great. It's what we do. Right?
It's truly a wonderful example of imperialism.
Yeah. But this is so. But the Britishness is important, right? But what I think is really important about this, right, is this is one of those like ideas that just gobsmacks you. You're like, what a brilliant conceit for a film, right? And it obviously came from a book, right? The Midwich Cuckoo, I think it was called. Yes. Or the Cuckoo of Midwich. One of those two, right?
It's the Midwich Cuckoos.
Yeah. What is brilliant about the movie is that it has this absolutely phenomenal conceit, right? An entire village goes dark at the exact same time, right? And when they wake up, all the women of birthing age are now pregnant. Brilliant. You're like, that's fucking brilliant. What this movie does so exceptionally well is I feel like the movie, the first handful of bit, right? Like once the British guy gets there and we see the policeman go down.
Mm-hmm.
That's our first hand. What they do is they lay the pieces of this, the world building in it is phenomenal, right? Because it is in our world. But the establishing of rules.
Yeah.
And the establishing of what's happening is so crystal clear, so concise and sharp. And the other thing I found about this movie is every time there was maybe a minor drag in the film, I would start thinking, well, wait, what about this, right? This is something that some character in this bubble may have confronted. It felt like the movie psychically was like, oh, you got that question? Boom, answer. It is phenomenal how concise they are. And they almost take it all the way to its logical conclusion. There's maybe like a couple real weird out there ones, but they do such a good job of building this invisible menace.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beginning of this movie, I remember I wrote down in my notes, I'm like, is it me or is the beginning of this movie exceptionally long? But then I thought about it and I'm like, there's no way they couldn't make it any shorter because they have to establish these rules very quickly. But also like in a way that paces well to keep the movie interesting. Because honestly, like we all know Village of the Damned, we see the poster, it's a bunch of creepy little kids. You're like, cool. You get about half an hour into the movie and you're like, when do these fucking kids show up? Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ. But the entire time the groundwork is laid so well that, again, like the pacing of the policeman falling asleep, the military showing up, the whole rigmarole of the pilot going down, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So good. Every aspect of it is so important because then when you finally get to the kids themselves, that established fear of like, holy shit, everyone thought it was like a gas or something, anything. It could have been anything. The whole thing is so established. You're like, you don't know what's going to happen. What if everyone falls asleep again? There's just like this overall well-established fear that make those kids within their own right, when they show up on screen, they're scarier, but only because we don't know where they came from at all. No recollection.
I think
we're as clueless as the village of Midwich.
Yeah, right. Well, I think the terror is kind of a twofold attack, right? So, in a way, to me, this is almost like it's hard to say. It's almost two different films, right? Because this first part is, the opening is actually truly terrifying to me, right? We see the man on the tractor going in circles and hitting the tree. It's a little violent, right? Yeah. But just the passing out, we see car crashes, we see an iron burn. Like, this is a horrifying scenario, right?
Right.
So that in and of itself, right? What if this shit just shuts down? And then you're left with this, because no one can go in the bubble. There's this, what the fuck is going on in there, right? That becomes so, this looming specter. And this film obviously has a very, violating kind of core, right? Sure, the violation that all of these characters feel, right? Especially the birthing moms, though. But the violation of, because this is the scene that I constantly find myself wondering every time I watch this, is I'm like, are we assuming that, like, with the same, if it's aliens, right? Because at one point he says, is there life on another planet? And the kids, like, look down and won't answer. Almost as if, hey, don't let them know about the invasion force coming or whatever. But then the ending presumes maybe demonic. But anyways, I'll get to that. But I was like, so are we to presume that whatever's making this Stephen King-like dome is also just like 3D printing these kids in the womb? Is there like a guy with like a, like a caulking gun full of kids? Or, I mean, is this like actual like going for it? And that becomes so horrifying to me. Because I was like, if it's a physical act, then it's got this gross, carnal, rapey vibe that's scary. If they're just walking around like just almost like the 3D printing version, that's also just so clinical and cold, right? That you are not even a thing to me. You're not a life form worthy of having the sanctity of your own body, right? So all of it becomes so fucking scary and weird. And the scene that really dialed in for me, right? Because you see these people like unable to accept when the man falls down. But when the plane falls down, that scene to me is the unbelievable scene of the film, right? In two ways. Yeah. Because one, you see this, it's like he can already see why send him lower. Why the the expendability of this man's life, right? That they're just like, go lower, but be careful. It's like, be fucking careful. I can't see. It's invisible. But when he dies, right, and you see the explosion in the woods, the look on everyone's face, I think that is the, no pun intended, that's like the lightning bolt moment of, oh my fucking God. Because before it's people passing out, right? We pull the soldier out and he's like, I'm cold. I'm just cold. It's fine. That's not when you see that plane fall from the sky, that is literally your modern technology and the military, the sign of power, has no fucking effect here.
Yeah.
Right? You can't bring anything to help. There's no help. It's just this invisible, reminder that life as you know it is done. And that scene, to me, like the reaction on the soldiers' faces right after that moment or two, and they do these great intercuts of what their faces, they like,
yeah,
and they know it's coming, right? Because he keeps going like, pull up, slow down. And you're like, nah, that ain't happening, right? Yeah. And it's so good because this is when these men are like, oh fuck,
yeah.
And I think the audience feels that too. Yeah,
that's something I really love about the way this movie is shot too. Is the close-ups are really like, I don't know. I feel like we've only ever seen that really in like mainly British movies from the 60s, which is like just these like weird, some of them are pushes in, but some of them are just like these quiet close-ups. Like they're not, there's no expression on their face other than tense. It's just like, it's just this continuous thing, but it builds such tension, particularly during that scene. I'll tell you the scene that I thought was, that was like the one that I was like, oh shit, like this is addressing something that no one was willing to address in 1960, but like it kind of came up, was the first woman when she goes into the doctor, realizing she's pregnant and she has like no way of explaining it. That scene with that woman, like she was wonderful, but like that was the part I was like, there is some true terror in the unknown in this fucking movie. Like, the unknown is so many variables in Village of the Damned, but I can't imagine the Cronenbergian fear you must feel having a baby inside you and you have no idea how it got there. That is like pure terror.
Well, that's because that like sequence, right, comes after. There's this funny part, right? We do this like kind of drifting camera when all the villagers are passed out. So we think, all right, something's floating around. We know something's happened, right? The close-up on the For Whom the Bell Tolls, Village of the Damned, right? An Iron Maiden voice, like, great opening. Then we kind of come back, and to your close-up point, there's just this shot of, it's the scene in the movie, or like, if this was a modern movie, this would be like the push in, I don't know what happened. I don't. Because they're literally, she's like, weird, I woke up cold. And he's like, me too, strange. Wow. And she asked him, like, darling, what did happen? And nowadays, be like, well, Michael Bay shot. I don't know. That's how we make movies today, right? And this one, he just literally is like, I don't know. And the close-up's not even on him, it's on her. Yeah. And it's just like, these people don't even give a fuck yet. It's just like look at that. But we know how scary it is, right? And to your point, I love this is fucking... Because, when we get to the lady who's like, I swear to God, I didn't have sex. There's a 17-year-old girl, right? There's a girl, or a woman, an older woman, whose husband just got home from a year abroad, and she's knocked up. And he looks like he could just murder at any minute. So this becomes really fucking scary, right? The only people who are happy are the fucking... richest whites up on the hill. Yeah, he's like, oh, great, I'm 85 and I'm obviously not pumping blanks. Of course. And it's like, yes, the sun. Me. Yeah, you good walk between the raindrops, old fucking dick slinger. Good for you, right? I'll tell you the scene that jumped out at me this time, and I was like, oh, that's Insidious. When she goes to the market, right, and she's picking up her like fucking pickles and anchovies, whatever that disgusting meal was she ate. Ugh. The ladies go, the lady at the shop, she's kind of hip, right? That maybe there's a pregnancy afoot, right?
Right.
And she just goes, how's Mr. God, I forget the character's name, right? Who's
Zellaby.
Yeah, how's Mr. Zellaby? And she goes, he's great. And gives her like the wink. And I was like, oh my God. So not only were these aliens impregnating, right? But there is a part of me that thinks that the second group, right? So that's the Alpha Strike, right? We got to penetrate, build our forces, get out, SEAL Team 6 of outer space, whatever. there's another team that's running around and like, hey man, you got to make all these dudes as horny as possible so that there's just this massive deluge of fucking so that everyone is convinced that they did knock their wives up. It's insane. Because when she looks at him and is like, better than ever, I was like, that's a Viagra commercial. They just put a Viagra commercial right in the middle of
Village of the Damned. The post wake up first like 5 minutes is a full blown Viagra commercial. The scene where she walks up to him, and they like passionately kiss and touch each other's faces, like, oh, they go bug.
Yeah. Oh, they've been. Well, it's so weird. They're like, are you cold? Me too. Just fucking whipping their tops off. It's like, paint me like your French girls. Like, that's not the reaction I would have to be like, fuck, I was knocked out for 3 hours. Like, Jesus Christ. But I was like, these aliens are making them horny as fuck. And I was like, this is what a strange sublayer. But again, it gets back to this. She's like, how are you going to hide this? That's the other. I was like, these aliens. That is like my one thing in the movie. I'm like, they didn't think it out well. Because I was like, why would you go to the small town where everyone knows everyone? You got to, like, if you drop these fucking things in, like, New York City, right? 100 of them. You're already in a spaceship. You're already able to beam down and have technology. Just watch New York like the real world for a month. And just be like, who's been getting crushed, right? That's who we can impregnate. Don't fucking go find, like, the old woman whose husband's been gone and the 17-year-old
You got to start your co-opting of the human race small. That's the whole point.
Well, no, I mean, I think it works really well for this movie because it extrapolates out on this concept of it's scarier when there are people who know for a fact they should not be pregnant. Right. If it was just like, the real world and every character's like, fuck, I knew it. Like, that's not, you're like, we knew it too. It's not that scary, right? But I was like, you could be a wee bit craftier. But I like it because it plays on this whole, like, virgin birth thing too. Like, we never really talk about in Bible stories, like, how weird it is that God's just like, boom, carry him. And, Joseph's just like, cool. I'm just going to be here to, like, shepherd and, change diapers, I guess, holy diapers. Like, yeah, that's me now. That's me, Joseph. This is the life I set out for myself, right? It's scary. And we never talk about that. And this movie talks about it. One of the things that really hit home with me now, being a father of, a 5 and a 2-year-old, I thought it was so funny that the fear takes the shape. These are not raving lunatic monster kids, right? No. Essentially, what is scary about these children is that they are every parent's wet dream of a child. Yeah. Minus making you boil your hand, right? That's not cool. That was not cool. Bad, baby.
I'm not saying they're not children. Other than that. I mean, there's occasional children moments.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they are the perfect children. They go to school. They come home. They act like little adults. Like, what more do you want? I mean, that's like, right. But you're right. That is like the true fear, and the more scary thing is that, like, and I think that's the thing that always is awesome about, like, Zellaby particularly, is like Zellaby spends the entire movie, like, everyone else is like, I feel like everyone else is like, get rid of these fucking kids. And he's the only one who spends the movie, like, trying to understand them a little better. Mm-hmm. Trying to actually figure out what it is that they're doing here. Because I think early on he knows, besides the fact that he's just not, I think he knows he's not the father, for one.
Oh, well, they show you that specifically in a scene. There's a moment after. Right. When we start finding out everyone's knocked up and whatever, where he walks up and touches his wife's face, as he's done a couple times at the start, and it's so fast, and they walk off and they hold on the wife, and you can see in her face like, oh, fuck, I'm damaged to him in a way. Right? Zellaby knows he's not, because again, he's like, fuck, I'm 68 years old. Like, he has to know he's not, just throwing seeds around. He's not like whoever's delivering the mystery seeds to all of us Americans, right? Like, that's not his life. And he has that moment, then he's like, oh, yeah, that's not me. Come on now. But he has that weird, like, maybe I'll get something out of this, right? Like, I think he then totally detaches from all the things he liked, right? Because when he finds out he's having the kid, you've made my happiness complete, right? I think after that, his happiness is undone and ripped asunder. And he's like, well, at least now I can, be attached to this great leap. Because this is the thing that it is weird, because the whole process of having kids is about us being consumed, right? When you have a kid, they are consuming you in a lot of ways, right?
Absolutely.
Your time, your energies, this is something that parents say that I hate because I think it's a shitty parent thing. It's like, the story's not about me anymore. I'm a side character. I'm like, that's when you have like bad dads that are like whipping fastballs at their kids. It's like, I didn't make varsity, but you're going to. Child abuse, right? Like whipping fastballs at their kid. Be tough, you puss. That's what bad parents do, right? I'm going to make you like a little version of me. You're not the subject in their story, but you realize, this is how I think of it as a parent, right? I'm not a subplot character in their fucking story. But I begin to think of my own story and how it's closer to the end. And how there's less possibility for me, and how I am set in a place in my ways, right? That's how I think of it as a parent, right? And that's what this movie does. Is what if even on a global scale, past just the home family unit, right? This is a moment where all of us just go, fuck, like we're done. We're useless. Because in this moment, these children can destroy the concept of God, society, government, individuality, right? There's a lot of that fear of communism in this again.
Yeah, definitely.
But it makes you wonder, though, because that's what I like about this. It is definitely a fear of communism movie, but I don't think that it makes a really strong case that's just like, communism's evil. Because I think they do a pretty good job of showing you it's not how we live, it's not what we're used to, and we don't want to be replaced by this. But I don't know that you can make the case that the kids are demonstrably worse than anyone else we see in the movie.
No, I mean, I think that's like, to me, I mean, yes, there are overreactions, but I will say, like, the kids, when they do things, like the car crash, I
mean, a guy was going to run down a 6-year-old girl because I don't know if he's drunk or not, but
there's rarely in the movie where any of the kids do things unprompted that would like anyone else would have like a reaction to. Like me personally, if someone tried to run over my 6-year-old kid, if I was a 6-year-old or if I was an adult seeing it happen, I'd probably chase the guy down and beat his ass. Or do something and find a way to make him hurt, because that's a terrible thing to have happen. You don't want anything like that to happen to a kid. Like,
yeah, if you had mind bullets, they're getting unleashed.
Sure. Exactly. Like, there's a level for sure. So to me, the kids are not necessarily, well, and they bring it up in the movie, but they're not necessarily evil. They don't have it's the predilection for like the consequences, I guess I would say. But like, to me, I can't remember how Zellaby put it, but he basically was like, the kids are not damn, I can't remember the phrasing. He said that they're missing the resistance to like reasoning, maybe. Is that what
emotion?
Emotion, yeah.
That's what makes them stronger, is they're not
right.
Because that's what the end of the movie is, the divergence, right? It's the strong, emotionally sound individual, which I think you could argue they made a stake in having Mr. Zellaby play that role, because he's essentially a British robot as well. They probably could have had one of the characters that had an emotion. I was thinking the mom. They kind of just like, thanks for the baby, you're out of the movie, right? She's there to just like, oh, David, right? Like, that's what she does for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, she's got a lot of that.
But she actually had, that's where I think they missed a little bit, right? Mr. Zellaby has no emotions in this whole movie. Neither does the brother-in-law military man. So who has an emotion that can then be I am strong and my emotional attachment is what saves? I guess you could argue that him blowing himself up and being nice to his dog, that's an emotional response. But it's cold and logical still.
But see, it's interesting that you say that, because I thought the same thing. Like, Zellaby goes, like, particularly with the climax of the movie, like, Zellaby goes in being like, I have to be a brick wall. I must be a brick wall. And nothing. Like, who the fuck's going to read your mind anyways, man? You have, like, no emotion. You are rich British man.
Well, no, that was one of those scenes where I was like, hey, maybe instead of, chanting the mantra, I must be a brick wall, I was like, maybe just make the fuse, like, 30 seconds shorter. Like, maybe the moment you walk in the door, just have it as a button. Hi, kids, fuck you very much. You know, like blow it up. Like, don't give yourself a 3-minute timer. Hey, kids, fuck your mothers. You know, that's what we used to do before you came here and took them over. I hate you. Explosion, right? You get one line and it's over. But that's his like his human side, right? Because that's the cool thing about Mr. Zellaby. Is like, you could be one of us if you went for your emotions. I was like, Which one? I mean, he's nice to his dog. That's literally his only. I guess he's like, oh, the vapors when he finds out he's going to be a dad. He's like, should I go to the kitchen? Where is that room? Can I make you something to eat? I'll try it. I don't know. I'm too busy being science man. But yeah, but this story though, right, of the strong individual with emotion versus the hive mind, all the thinking. It's really interesting. And I think you actually see a weirder version of it, right? Which is the strong mob ridden with emotion versus the mob that is like one hive mind, cold and illogical, right? When the drunk dads are like, fuck them, we're going out. Like, that's a scene that really hit me because, you know, with what's happening in the world today, right? We have a lot of this. Our norms are being broken constantly.
Right.
And every day it feels like we're finding ourselves in new realities. Like, this is how it is now. Right? Like, there's a little kid in my neighborhood, and I heard them running around yesterday, right? Like, they can play outside and, like, you know, try to stay apart, whatever. No licking each other. You set it down, like, some ground rules and hope for the best, right?
Right.
And the girl ran by, and she's just like, enough of the dang coronavirus talk. It's just the flu. And I was like, oh. Because we all live in a neighborhood, so her parents are friends of mine on Facebook. And I just know that they're not real smart, right? Like, they're dumb. And one of the best things about dumb people is they've set their flags down. They know what they want to know, and they start, of course, neither of them are doctors. They don't know anything about medicine, but they're over it, right? And I think we see this. That's like a small example of what you see across the whole world right now is people who don't want to face a new reality. So what they're doing is finding any way, demon sperm or whatever else to, this is what I believe, and I'm going to make it true. I'm going to foist my thoughts into reality. You're like, that's not how this shit works. And that scene very much resonated because that guy just walked into the bar, right? His wife has given birth to this thing. It now lives at a school, and he's just, fuck you, I'm going to have a beer, right? And next thing you know, he's like, I think we should kill him. Let's kill him. And walks down there because he's like, I'm not fucking being replaced. And you just see this bar. There's that great, like, pan across the room. You just see all these men, right? The kind of guys who, if you're at a barbecue with them, be like, let me tell you what's really going on in Washington. I'm like, yes, you are a realtor who sells condos. I'm sure you know the inside deeds. Please hook me up with your fucking vast forbidden knowledge, fucking Rick. You know what I mean? That's the guy who's at that bar. The guy who is a small, tiny person and hasn't realized it yet, right? The guy who thinks he knows all the truths and then is smacked by the universe and saying, fuck, I am small, I am meaningless, like I can get fucking mind controlled into a wall, right? And that guy, those group of guys, right, have seen two of their ilk, right? Like one of the startling scenes is the shotgun scene. Yeah. With one, the Zelabes and, brother can't help. And this other guy who wanted to kill them ends up being killed, even though he relented at Zelabes' request. So you see this, like, this being brushed aside of these men. And this bar full of men who were the kings of their own tiny worlds now know how useless they are. And they're like, let's go murder kids. And it's like, they're probably the most honest characters in the movie to me. Because this is a question I'll ask you, right? If this happened in our world today, you can't go back, right? Like if this happened somewhere, right? Like let's say this happened here where I live, right? And that was like the town next door. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to work on Monday. I'm like, guys, something happened. It's broken. It's over, right? Like I'm not going back to State Farm or Steak and Shake or wherever the fuck people work. That is not fulfilling because you're like, bitch, it's over. This whole fucking group of lies and symbols, money and governments and whatever, it's done. They're lasering 3D printed babies into us and they're mind controlling us. It's over. And these guys have the most honest reaction, right? Because you have the two, right? There's the Zellabe, like, I'm very academic about it. I know I'm replaced. It's inevitable, right? This is where we're going. Or they took our jobs. We're gonna go fucking.
I mean,
kill
again. It's why watching it, I just thought of Invasion of the Body Snatchers because it feels very much like it is that like there is obviously a story of communism stuck inside there somewhere, but like at the same time, it is about your inability to handle the fact that you are replaced or that you're going to be replaced. Anything like that, like that is that's a human constant. That's a very human emotion. And I think that's the kind of crazy thing is, to me, like that was the thing. The kids the kids started to have far more human reactions to, like, again, the car crash is, to me, like the great moment in the movie, because like these kids are far more human than we're ever acting. Like, again, Zellaby is literally like, well, I'm sure it's all right. We'll figure it out. We'll go have a British intelligence meeting about it. It'll work out fine. All this other shit. Like, because you're right. The guys in the bar who literally they literally have like fucking pitchforks and fire with them. Like, they are the honest reaction to, yeah, like they took our jobs gag. Like, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But
let me stop you there, though, because you made a point about body snatchers, though, right? I think what makes this one even a little scarier, right? Because that's just we are replaced by something, right? Body snatchers in almost all of its versions is another Griffey would, emerge from what I'm assuming is a quadruple XL pod, right? He like tries to sit up, but he gets stuck. He's out of breath. He's like, fuck. He stands up and he's like, I'm here. You're done. And I'm like, no. We try to fight. We both have asthma and die. Whatever. But that's like someone's trying to replace me with a more ready to be ruled hive mind me. What is really cool about the story of Village of the Damned is that if you take out the alienness, right? Like, let's say you took out the bubble and you just started the movie with, wow, every woman in the village is pregnant and all the kids are the same. And we don't know anything about aliens or how this happened, right? These men are afraid of the exact thing that is supposed to happen to keep our species alive, which is we are supposed to breed, and the mixture of our genes makes a stronger offspring that will then go forth and do that.
Right.
So these men are, again, the start of it changes that a bit, but they are really scared of the fact that there are just better people, right?
Right. I mean, I think that is like, to me, that's like the men versus women argument in this, because look, the women in this movie are pretty docile. Like, they understand what's happening. Like,
well, I think it's a movie of its time where they're not allowed to be the POV, sure, even though they are the ones that are the most affected by it, which is strange.
Right. I'll give you that. Like, that's absolutely true in a way. I mean, definitely a movie a victim of its time. But what I also say is that, because, yeah, like, I mean, there's a scene where literally Zellaby, like, slaps a woman across the face. It's like, oh, she's hysterical. Like, Jesus Christ. What is going on?
An emotion. Right? That's the Britishes. Ew, gross.
But yeah, so.
It's so ridiculous.
It's like, it's such a weird kind of, yeah, I'm not sure. It's such a strange thing, because to me, women, and again, we've had a kid now, women give birth. Like, they are the life givers. Men are literally just like holding the package. We just like, here you go. Like, we're FedEx or Amazon Prime delivery, and we're like, here, it's a same day delivery. Don't worry about it.
Well, actually, you're giving us even more credit than that. What we really are in the birth process is I order it on Amazon. Someone else like does everything, right? Makes the product, brings it to me. But I pick it up at the doorstep, and you're like, look what I did. I gave us a book, right? Like, we really have no value in the birthing process. But that's what I mean. I feel like that one, there's a couple great moments of that with the women characters, but what they really missed in this movie, right? Because all the men characters, right? Like, the bar and the war room scene are the same scene but inverted, right? That is the rich power people who realize that all of their fucking power is an illusion, right? It is so much dust in the wind, and they are pretty much fucked now. Because these kids can defend themselves, and, we sent soldiers in, they all just murdered each other. Like, all of their power and wealth and knowledge and all that shit doesn't matter, right? So they have this very obvious, how can we keep our power for as long as possible? The men at the bar are like, fuck, I've had nothing. I still got nothing. Now these fucking kids are here. I'm going to go fuck them up. And that's the same scene, right? So the men characters are, especially back at the further back you get, it was more of a, we're men, we're strong rulers, right? No emotions, hunters, woo. And to be confronted with your fucking absolute, flaccid ability to respond to this scenario. So the movie does a great job with that version of this, right? What I don't think they do is what happens to a mother who is violated, but then maybe through the course of this, they have to have this weird relationship, right? Like, they're still nurturing this child and raising it. Is there some kind of bond that's actually formed? Is there never like that version of I created a life, but I didn't. It's not the life I hope. Because the mom, when she's like losing it in the bed, I thought that was a really fascinating look at this. She's like, whose life is it? What am I growing? And that has to be so fucking ridiculously scary for that to just be happening in your body for 9 to 10 months and not fucking know. Because one of the scenes that I thought was really cool was when, the doctor's like testing them all. And he puts the x-ray up, right? And they look at it and he goes, that is the most perfectly formed embryo I've ever seen.
Yes.
And the fact that it's so perfect that becomes scary, right? The fact that when the kids walk around, they're all dressed up, they're all well behaved. We don't see that wild spark in them, right? When we see them interact with other kids, they're little shit burglars, they're roughhousing, they're dirty, they're kicking balls, right? That's how we think of kids, right? Kids are fun because they have this, we don't know to be downtrodden and miserable yet, right? These kids walk around this town like they're 48-year-old accountants, right? And they've already like had the joy of life taken from them.
Yes.
And it's weird that we see that in these kids, we see what we become, and we're like, gross, it scares me. Instead of like, this is what you should have. That's what we tell our kids, like, act better, do that. Everything we tell our kids to be is what these kids are. And we see ourselves in it, we go, gross, repulsive, atomic bullet, pew. It's a really nice game the movie plays, though, man.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that makes the movie scary and entertaining all at once is, I mean, scary and entertaining are the same thing. But I mean, I think that's what makes it worth watching in general, especially this version, is because there is this sort of there's just this sort of notification to all the adults is like, listen, you have nothing left to give the world. Like, these kids are the next thing. Yeah. And again, that's like, it factors into the communism thing, but also the atomic age, all this stuff of the unknown that we had in 1960, like, just scratched the surface of. And even now, like, looking at it now, it is still terrifying because you never know. These, like, kids are just, because kids themselves are just these packets of who knows that, you could have the bad seed, you could have a Village of the Damned kid, or you could just have, a regular kid. I don't know. Just a
little Rego, right? We all just want a little Rego.
Just a little normie.
Just a little normie. Just a little normie. But yeah, but that's the line that Zellaby says that kind of distills, because I think that's one of the things that I think some people would say that this movie drags a little bit after the kids come in. Mm-hmm. Because it's a lot of sitting and pontificating about what these kids are. But I think it really works for this movie because, again, like the invisible bubble at the start, we're told that it, is gone because a cow stands up, right? And everyone wakes up. That invisible bubble never leaves, right? So the whole movie, there is this absolute helplessness that sends these characters into this nihilistic spin, which I think is really important, right? And so, there's a lot of pontificating and talking and not doing stuff. But I think it's a really good effect, actually, right? Because, again, it's like all these men of action and whatever. You can't do anything. What the fuck do you do?
Yeah.
You just sit helpless.
It's the helplessness of it all and the sort of stillness of the location and the story itself that makes it that much more tense. It's really what sells the movie and makes it worth watching.
Yeah, well, when Zellaby says that, right? We could jump science forward 100 years. And the other guy's like, or die. like, what's the point? Like, oh, sweet, you'll have an iPhone 1000, but we'll all be dead, right? We'll all be weird-eyed zombie freaks. You butt that up against, right? So the helplessness, but is it a gift? Is it not? And then you just have these kids. There was a line in the movie, too, that resonated with me more, right? That we have to survive at all costs, right? When David comes, he's like, hey, make some plan. We need to get out and get among the populace. Yeah. He's like, maybe we have fucked up by doing all, like, just in one village, right? Maybe we should have jumped a little more, right? Instead of 6 in one, maybe do like, every town's got one weirdo kid, right? So they needed a strength in numbers in their larval state. Now they're like, we got to get out and start banging normies. You know what I mean? Like, we'll do it that way.
Right.
But there's this line when, there's a twofold moment where he talks about, you shouldn't be asking questions like where they came from, right?
Right.
And the kid also says we have to survive at any cost. So it gives them almost this, they're the last of their kind, right? So instead of this is the birth and rise of something new and scary, this is the last gasp of something that is scary to us, right? So there's this cool, maybe this, instead of looking at the movie as this is them seeding for a future, this is them trying to seed because they were us, man. They ran too close to the sun and everything's fucked up and now they're here. Right. We never quite know, man. Did you settle in your brain? What do you think these kids are? You think this is an alien thing for sure?
I think they're aliens. Yeah.
It seems that way to me. There was a weird part of me, though. In the final shot, right, when we see the fire in the building, we see like 8 eyes, right? It looks like a Scooby-Doo like opening title card. Ooh! Right. And they float to the screen. I was like, demons, I knew it, demon sperm. This is what that lady was talking about in Washington. Demon sperms, right? Because their eyes just go, oh. The eyes survive, right? Maybe they're still out there.
I mean, they're aliens. They could have just survived in general. I always assumed they were aliens from.
I thought they were aliens.
Probably too. Halfway through, I'm like, aliens for sure.
But if they're aliens, though, that seems really strange to me, because again, what I like, this is an alien invasion movie in most senses, right? But I like that it's a quiet, very still. It's not this big bombastic, It's not like an Independence Day thing, right? I think it's a cool way to look at it, have a little more time to pontificate than watching the dog jump through, an explosion in the tunnel and stuff. But if it's aliens, I have all these extra questions, right? Like, where are the crafts? Do they even need crafts? Why this strategy? Why must they survive at all costs? Why not send backup, right? If you're sending all these, like, where's the guy who is creating all the embryos, right? He's pumping them in. Isn't he hiding in the wood? Like, what if it's the predator, right? He's hiding in the woods like the tall man, like, yeah. So when some guy comes out with a shotgun or, a drunken torch bearer, he's like, oh, I'll fuck them up for you. Don't even worry about that. They don't have intergalactic henchmen. They're making everyone horny, but they don't have the powers to make them docile. Like, there's a lot. If it's aliens, I feel like there's a lot more going on, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is like it's a fascinating invasion movie because it doesn't feel like an invasion for almost the entire movie. It just feels weird. And I think that's strictly because we're all used to like Children of the Corn. And that's like what's plugged in our brains for like pale blonde children. I mean, obviously not all the children of the corn are pale blonde children, but
this has to be a little ribbing at their German neighbors, you would assume.
Yes.
Right? Like, there's a lot of that in the casting of these kids.
Right. I mean,
I don't know. It gives them almost a strange sympathy, though, because I would disagree slightly. I think it feels very invasion-y. Just, it's so much more personal. Right? Like, most invasion movies we're here with our robots and spaceships to fucking burn it down. These children, actually, they want to be taught by us. They need us to raise them, right? They're here. They're not destroying things unless you come at them. Then they'll get you, right? The Russian kids went off the deep end, but, we all watch Rocky IV. That happens when you just train in a lab. Right. It's weird, right? So, I don't know. I found the kids more enigmatic than I remembered this time watching it.
Yeah, I mean, to me they were far more. I thought they were far less. They felt oddly more human in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, that was a fun line when David even says to him, he's like, "Hey, maybe don't ask questions. Don't try to even understand where we are." Right? And maybe they're saying to the audience, we've done a pretty good job here setting, right, when the soldiers are staking the boundary. It's like the script is really a masterclass in laying out this big, weird concept, right? Like, it really does a great job. Yeah. And maybe that's just the writer, like, there are going to be some things you can pull on. Like, fuck off. Like, it's really hard to do this. Leave us alone.
Yeah, there is that, like, level in the movie where, like, just can you just watch the movie for, like, 10 minutes? Thanks.
Did you like the car crash? Shut up. Did you like the exploding head with the shock? Shut up. Right? The scene, I forgot another scene that rocked me this time. I love the torchbearer scene, right?
Yeah.
They're coming at the house. There's a weird reaction, though, that I think really sells kind of the whole movie to me, which is he locks eyes with the one guy, right? I'm gonna fuck you up. He makes him start lighting himself on fire. You see the guy fighting, but he can't as he's slowly engulfed in flames.
Right.
The thing that struck me about that scene, though, which I had forgotten since last time I watched it, is the reaction of all the other drunk dads. They don't leap into action, and they don't make them look like they're captured like the Zelebes were with the suicide guy, right?
Right.
The dads don't have to be mind controlled because in that moment, their absolute impotence is laid bare, right? So you just watch these men holding toward. They don't rush him. They don't bum rush him. They don't start fucking chucking those torches.
No.
They don't even bring out the other kids, right? They're not going all glowy-eyed. One kid looks at one adult man and stops. It's like, cutting the head off the serpent. That scene, though, watching those dads and the horror on their face as they watch their friends slowly be consumed by fire, and the realization that is to them, I thought was stunning. Brilliantly staged moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those great, it's a great moment. And when I was watching, I was like, this is like one of those great moments in humility of a man. You're like, wow, I am fucked.
Yeah, well, no, it's literally the Chappelle skit. When keeping it real goes wrong, that is when he knew he had fucked up, right? That is the exact Chappelle skit, right? It's like, let's go fuck those kids up. And then as soon as he's like, his kids are on fire, he's like, oh, God, I regret this. Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's this perfect, it's this perfect, again, I keep going back to it feels very British, but because it's just, you're like, that's the best solution we have. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, because if they made this in America, that is the thing you have to grapple with is, dude, people would just be fucking sniping at these kids all day.
Oh, yeah. We've already would have been shooting these children.
I mean, every fucking homeowner would be like, it's school time, the bus is here! Just taking shots, dude.
Right.
It would look like Sonny from The Godfather, that school bus, right? Just every fucking person in an American town would be laying waste to school children everywhere. We just let our kids get shot up all the time.
Yeah,
we don't give a fuck in this country,
remade.
let alone if they were fucking demon children.
Yeah, this movie needs to be remade. To stand the test of time, The Village of the Damned needs to be remade as set in Alabama, and then we'll know. I
would imagine very much like our Eskimo friends, they'd be like, we didn't quite like it, so we went to slaughter, right? That was actually a cool bit of information, though, is that because they had the white hair, they knew something was amiss, right? They knew something was wrong. And that's another thing in the movie is that the aliens, this feels like a desperate attempt if it's aliens too, because they don't do a great job of blending. They obviously take some DNA from us because the kids look slightly different. But the not being able to hide the eyes and the hair feels like if you were a much more clever race, you would have figured that out, right? You got to know, the Eskimos would be like, weird, right? We got a bunch of Targaryens running around here. What's happening? You know what I mean? Dragon's fire. Just mowing them down, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I think but it's to me that, like you were saying earlier, it is a dig at, it's 1960 and the otherness of blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids is, I think, what they're addressing a little bit in this movie.
And this was definitely not the right time to be the blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid anymore.
Right, exactly. So, if you villainize blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids in a village in Britain, you're like, cool, yeah, of course they're bad. They're Nazis. There is sort of that, Nazi vibe.
Look at the way they like those little black outfits. I knew it.
Look, they're all dressed in Hugo Boss. Kill them.
Fuckers. Yeah. No, I think it's fascinating. It would be, because this Carpenter, again, I think that is a waste of his talents is to remake this movie.
Too. Which it's weird because that's he loved that movie when he was younger.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a fucking great film. But again, it's what he does so well. There is the Carpenter man. You'd like to see the John Carpenter man go up against this reality. That movie is just very strange in a lot of ways, the Carpenter remake. But I think there's a way to remake this. I think you almost have to do it like Contagion, where it's how do you watch the global community Because
Absolutely.
instead of making like one group of kids we focus in one village, just like World War Z, the book does this, right? Where it's just jump, 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 story all around the world, right? A really good version of this story, if anyone's interested in reading, or it is a sci-fi miniseries, is Childhood's End. It's one of my favorite sci-fi. Essentially, it's just a giant ship shows up, and we're like, what the fuck? We're all amped up, and then it's like, oh, okay, we can't do anything. And like he talks to like one farmer. It's really interesting stuff, but I like this kind of invasion story myself a little more. I love the idea of people in power, humans, confronting the very sudden end of all of these falsehoods that we've built our lives on. I think it's one of my least favorite trait in most people are the people you meet who are like, I got it all figured out. And I love movies that shows us that guy and then rips the door wide open to go, oh, this is a fucking enormous universe that we can't begin to wrap our mind around anything that's happening here. And just watching those falsehoods crumble and what's left in a character. You know what I mean? I found that really, really fascinating in this movie. I like this kind of invasion film a lot. And really, as a screenwriting exercise, this script is fucking concise. Like, this script really fucking hones in and does an amazing job of dealing with this really big kind of world-ripping theory they give us.
Yeah, I mean, it's concise, and it also does that thing that movies in the 1960s had to do, which, like, you know, we saw this in Psycho, where you had to explain a lot more than I think we normally expect people to in movies, because at that time there was not widespread knowledge of like psychosis or just, I mean, this kind of particular science in general. Obviously, there's a lot of science fiction in it, but nevertheless, like, there is a lot of explanatory and expository moments in this movie, but they don't feel boring. And I think that's really kind of like the thrill of the movie itself. I was reading some notes, and the director actually was like, I really wanted to make this feel like a documentary, so that's why.
Well, what's cool about those overly talky scenes, right, is that they're still scary because of those opening camera shots of us drifting around, watching people in their lives but passed out. And again, that shot on the street that kind of slowly cranes up, hits the tree, and then ends on the clock tower. That camera becomes some kind of ghost agent, right? Some weird voyeur that shouldn't be there when all these people are at their absolute most vulnerable. And that feeling doesn't leave when the cow wakes up, right? And in the same way, I think it's funny, too, because you get the sense of the ending. It also reminds me, it's a corollary back to the pilot. You're like, if they would have just waited 5 more minutes, that pilot's not dead.
That guy would be dead. Yeah, I'd be fine.
Yeah, so like we have this thought with Zellaby at the end, like, what if they had given those kids 5 more minutes, right? What if the kids were allowed to go out? What's the worst case that would have happened? I like that this movie also doesn't land on a complete yes or no, right? Like, are these kids evil? Maybe only to us because they are better than us and could replace us. But is that not the natural way of things, right? I like that it doesn't make them just absolute villains.
Totally. I mean, I think that that's the value of making a movie where, because, and it's interesting, like, we talk about this month with the pods evil spawn, like, making movies where kids are just like determinedly evil. That feels false, because kids are supposed to be sort of this blank slate in a way.
Right.
So to me, when we talk about the evil spawn, it's children who not necessarily, and again, that's why I like the bad seed, because the bad seed, they try to just say, well, she was born bad, there's no way around it. And you're like, that just seems like a fucking cop-out. And
she
that's
didn't know she was bad, so she among all of them keeps her child's side.
Right. And this one, and I think Village of the Damned does a good job of not making these children resolutely evil, because when you really watch the movie and extrapolate what they do, like, again, I was like, I probably would be doing, not sure I'd commit murder, but I'd probably be bucking around too. Like, I'd make someone pay for almost running me over, and I'd make someone,
Well, all of their actions are defensive in nature. They make sense.
Yes,
and these kids, again, these aren't, like, I would argue Macaulay, like the next two we do, right? Macaulay Culkin and Esther. They are some kind of fucking maniacal broken things, right?
Yeah.
These kids just seem like, dude, we got a job to do. We're here. Like, they literally are like 50-year-old accountants who are just tired of your chucklehead behavior, children. Get in line, children, right? They're here to wrap your knuckles with a ruler. It just might so happen they wrap your car around a brick wall, too. So they're not all the way. They don't value our lives at all, right? Which is probably their, like, bad part. But, like, every other, like, even the mom boiling her own hand, you're like, well, she fucking burned a baby. Stop getting day drunk. Do your job. Don't burn your baby with the bottle.
Don't burn your baby with a bottle. What's wrong with you?
And he's just like in the crib.
Totally
like,
deserved it.
You know, it's weird too. When they did the birth scene and the dog was growling at the crib, something that really haunted me this time, no crying. No crying right after the birth and the dog. Like, when you have kids, you're used to, kids cry all the fucking time. The crying is really, it becomes like an extra heavy weight, right? Another invisible field on us. But yeah, man, I think it's just such a brilliant idea that they really, really narrowed in on, right? Like, they really found the edges, and every time I started to have a question, they found an answer for me in a really satisfactory way. I just think it's a very cleverly crafted piece. Again, maybe there are some things of the time that aren't as slick and fast-paced and dramatic as you want, but I think that lends to the kind of inevitability of the terror, man. So, yeah, I highly recommend The Village of the Damned. I'm assuming if you made it this far that you're super happy drinking your usual wine that you bought with our code FILM. Perhaps. So you get $8 off and you'll get a free bottle. I'm assuming you love Village of the Damned. I'm assuming you got at us on socials and gave us shout-outs, and we're just like, BFFs, now digital BFFs. I'm assuming you emailed us and said, nailed it, dudes. Nailed it. Also, I am afraid of demon sperm. I'm waiting for that email. And I'm also assuming you're watching our faces so you can see our chuckleheads talking, right, on our YouTube channel, Nerd Alchemist. All right, guys, we're halfway through the pod's Evil Spawn month. May have some extras for you coming as well with some special guests. Up next, we're going to meet The Good Son. It's an awesome movie. I'm very excited to discuss. So until then, for the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex D'Andino.